Okay, good evening everyone. Shalom Aleichem. We're continuing Daf Hashavua. Today we learned Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph live from Brooklyn, New York. Today's Daf. Actually, today we just do the Mishnah, but it's a pretty lamdasha Mishnah. The Mishnah says like this. The Mishnah is on Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. Here we go. Says the Mishnah, Kainam Peros Ha'elo Alai. If somebody says, these fruits are kainam to me, kainam hein alpi, or they're kainam on my mouth, kainam hein lifi, they're kainam to my mouth, then the halacha is asur b'chilufeyan u'v'giduleyan. Since you said alai, you're asur not only to the fruits themselves, but you're asur to what you exchange them for, and you're asur to what grows out of them. However, if you say sha'ani oichel, if he says fruits that are kainam to me, that I'm going to eat, v'shani tamer, that I'm going to taste, mutter b'chilufein v'gedayim. You're mutter in what you exchange them for and what grew from them. Okay. Let's see the Ran. The Ran says, Kainam per se'elo alai, Kainam hein alpi, Kainam hein lefi asr b'chilufein u'gedelein mishum, because the kivan sheparat hadvarim hane'asarim alav. The reason is, since you enumerated the asr things upon you, shavinu alei kehektish. You made it like hektish. In other words, the Ran is bothered. Why is it asur b'chilufein u'v'gidulein? And the Ran says the ikar lamdas here is that since you enunciated on you, alav, you said alai, so you said it should be kainam alai, therefore it has a din of hektish, and therefore umisham hachi mechaser b'chilufein u'v'gidulein. Therefore, mitzar b'chilufein, you're asur in the what you exchange it for and what it grows. Kehechi de chilufei hektish v'gidul v'asiri. Just like what you exchange and what grows out of hektish is asur. So the Ran is learning that the reason for the isur of chilufin and gidulin is because it's like hektish, and it's not like somebody made a neder stam from, let's say, figs in general or grapes in general. So, in other words, like this. It's not just that the Ran is learning, since you said alai, you're asur b'chilufin v'gidulin, because you said kainam, but you specified the fruit that's asur. You didn't just say figs in general or grapes in general. Since you did not enumerate the entire species, let's read a little bit further in the Ran. It's not like someone who made a neder stam from figs and grapes. Shekivan shalei parat va'asar alav kalamin. Since you didn't specify and you asar the whole min, lo yasam alav hektish. You didn't make it hektish on you. Shalei niskavein ella me'achilas oisoy min. When you say I'm asering grapes and figs, you're asering the whole species. So you're not making it hektish. You only wanna, you're only niskavein from the eating of that min. So therefore you're not answering chilufin of gedayim. But when you're pirate and you say these fruits, so in other words, when you say alai, you're designating the fruits. If you're designating the fruits, then you're making it like hektish. If you're making it like hektish, you're also in the chilufin and the gidulin. But the Mishnah then continues. This is bedavar shazare kala. Everything we said until now, it's talking about a regular fruit that when you put the seed in the ground, the seed disintegrates, the seed decomposes. Avo bedavar shein zarei kala. But if it's a type of fruit where the seed does not decompose, afilu gidulin asurin, then not only what grows from it, but what grows from that. Meaning, something where the original seed does not decompose, then if you take that, let's say what grew from it, and you plant it, then what grows out of that is Aser. Let's see the Ran for an explanation of that. The Ran is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 9th wide line. Shani oichal, shani toyem, motor b'chilufein v'gedulen. Denehid de shani oichal, shani toyem, mapish yisura. It's true that shani oichal and shani toyem you're increasing the Isser. In other words, let's think about that for a moment. When you say koinam peros elu alai, koinam hein al pi, you're also in the chilufin of gedem. If you say shani oichal, shani toyem, you basically say koinam peros elu alai, shani oichal, shani toyem, you're mutter in the chilufin gedem. You're adding. No, you're not also in the chilufin gedem. Why? Because when you aser only what you eat, when you say shani oichel, it's only that item itself, but not something that comes from it. Dahaki achal chalipin v'gedulin, when you eat, what you exchange it for and what grows from it, loy ta'im hanu perois da aser aleha. You do not taste those fruits that are aser. Bedavar shazaroi kala, avo bedavar she'ein zaroi kala, afilu gidule gedulan asran. Okay, so now this is going on the whole mission. It's very interesting that the din that only the chilufin and gidulin are asar is only when it's zarei kala. If it's ein zarei kala, even chilufe, even gidule gidulin or chilufe chalufe, even gidule gidulin are asar. V'hachi kamar. My da'amin b'reisha asar b'gidulein, the masha dafka b'gidulein mitzar avu b'gidule gidulin shari. Hani mili, when is this applied b'davar shazare kala? That's something that the seed disintegrates. T'b'chi hai gavna, because in such a circumstance, nehi de b'gidulin rishonim mitzar. In such a circumstance, it's true in the original gidulin, it's aser. So it's only davar shazare kala. Because what grows from it is aser. Dafagav deleka midi mimayda aser begidulin. Because even though there isn't anything that's aser in what grew from it, dazare kala, filuachi loigori gidulin mechilufin. In other words, what the Ran is bothered by, that why is gidulin aser, but the original seed, in other words, what did you aser? You asered the seed. So what grows from it is aser. Why should it be aser? The original item disintegrated. So why should it be aser? The answer is, it's not worse than chilufin. The chilufin nami afagav de lasumidi mimayda aser alei afil hachi asira. So the lamdus is that by something which is zarei kala, the reason why the gidulin are aser is because even though there's no remnant of the original item, but it's not any worse than chilufin. Afilu hachi asiri miu begidule gidulin. What grew from what grew, it's mutter because that's much more far-fetched than chilufin. The kiven the gidulin bedavar shazar kala kechalipin dami. Since what grew from it is like the chalipin, kihechi the chalipe chalipin mutar. Just like what you exchange for something that you exchange is mutar. Kidemuchach le'el bahashutvin gabe machran. Like by the case, like it's muchach earlier in hashutvim, by if somebody sold and he married with the money, it's mikudashes hachinami gidule gidulin shari. So too, what grew from what grew, it's mutter, right? We had earlier that if you sell something which was aser b'neder and you used the money, so then it's mikudashes. So chilufin is mutter. Mishamachi ktani uvegidulein demashma aval gidule gidulin loy. Mishum Damairi B'davar Shazare Kala. It's talking about something where the seed disintegrates. V'chein nami seifa. Likewise in the seifa. Deshani oichal shani toyim. Mutter b'chilufin uv'gidulin. That's also Davka B'davar Shazare Kala. Even in the seifa, when you say that I'm going to eat, that I'm going to taste, that's only... And we say your mutter and the chiluvin and gedulin, that's something that's zarei kala because you're only aser that item. Aval davar she'ein zarei kala. But if the seed does not disintegrate, bein bereisha, bein beseifa, even the gidulei gedulin asurin. Why? The gidulei gedulin asurim in a case of kainam because okay, so the Ran has not yet explained why Gidule Gidulin. He explained why Gidule Gidulin is in general mutter, because that's much more far-fetched than Chalipin, but that's by Davar She'ein Zarei Kala. That's by Davar She'zarei Kala. But Davar She'ein Zarei Kala, whether you say Sha'ani Toyem, or whether you say Kainam alai, afilu gidulim asur mishum dekivan de'in zarei kala. Since the original seed does not disintegrate, hare begidule gidulin halalu. In the growth of the growth, you have from the original davar asar mu'urav behen min ha'isar rishon. You have mixed into it from the original isar. Nedarim. So you say, well, let's make a mathematical analysis over here. That is, you had a seed. From the seed grew an apple. So if it's something, an apple is not a good example because an apple, the seed is kala. But let's say an onion, she'ein zarei kala, and something grew from the original bulb, and then you planted the onion and something grew from that. So it's less than 60 of the original bulb is in the gidule gidulin. And in that case, why don't we say it's mutter b'shishim? The answer is it's what we call Nedarim is davar sheyesh lo matirin. Why? Because you could be matir neder. Because in Nedarim havlu davar sheyesh matirin, because I'm reading the Gemara, v'chol davar sheyesh lo matirin, afilu be'elef loy batal. Nedarim is something that has a heter, and since it could have a heter through she'elas chacham, therefore it's not batal. The Mishnah continues. The Mishnah says, ha'imar le'ishta, if someone says to his wife, kainam maseh Yadayach alayach, I asked her the work of your hands on me. Kainim hein alpi, they're usser. They're an isser kainim on my mouth. Kainim hein lifi, they're a kainim to my mouth. Usser b'chilufeihen. He's usser what he exchanged it for. Uvigduleyan, and what grew from it. Why are you usser b'chilufin uvigidulin? Because you answered that thing itself. So you made it like an isser hektish. But if you say shani oichal, that which I'm going to eat, shani toyem, then mutter b'chilufin, you're permitted in what you exchange it for, uvigidulin, what grows out of it. And again, this is talking about b'davar shazarei kala. Avol b'davar she'ein zarei kala, where the seed does not decompose. In other words, let's say she made fruits. Now, what does that mean, she made fruits? How does a person make fruits? So talking about she must have planted something, and that's considered her work. Or let's say food that she makes. Now, what exactly is usher? Let's say she made a piece of chicken. The chicken is not her masiyadayim. Let's say you bought the chicken and she made it. So that labor that she put into the food, if we would put value on that, it's that value of her labor which is usher, but not the value of the original produce. But the din of gidulin is asar and chilufin is asar, but gidulin is mutter is only b'davar shazarei kala. Aval davar she'ein zarei kala, something where the seed does not disintegrate. Afilu gidulin asar, and even what grows from what grows is asar. The Mishnah continues. Sha'ad oisa ein oichel ad Pesach. Let's say a person says, that which you make, I'm not going to eat until Pesach. Sha'ad oisa ein miskas ad Pesach. That which you make, I'm not going to cover myself until Pesach. So whatever you make, I'm not going to eat before Pesach. Whatever you make, I'm not going to wear before Pesach. Asa salafnei Pesach. If she made it before Pesach, so then mutter lacholos kasas achra Pesach. She's allowed to eat and cover herself after Pesach, because he only said whatever you make, I'm not going to have until Pesach. So isn't that obvious? He only said that I'm not going to have it until Pesach. The chiddush is, maybe you would think what he means is sha'ad oisa Ada Pesach, whatever you make till Pesach, eini oichel. Maybe I'm not going to have indefinitely. So we say, no, that's not what it means. The Ada Pesach is going on the eini oichel, not on sha'ad oisa. So achar Pesach, in other words, if he says sha'ad oisa eini oichel Pesach, sha'ad oisa eini miskaseh Pesach, so also lefnei Pesach, if she makes it before Pesach, mutter lechol eskases achar Pesach. You could eat and cover yourself after Pesach. Sha'ad oisa ad Pesach eini oichel. But if the guy says whatever you make before Pesach, I'm not going to eat indefinitely. V'sha'ad oisa ad Pesach eini miskaseh. Whatever you eat until Pesach, I'm not going to cover myself with. Also sol lefnei Pesach. Whatever she made before Pesach, also lechol eskases achar Pesach. He cannot eat and cover himself after Pesach. Says the Ran, bottom 4 lines, Sha'ad oisa eini oichel ala Pesach, mutter lechol eskases lachar Pesach. D'loi misafkinan, we have no doubt, and to say Dilma Ada Pesach koi, maybe Ada Pesach is going on the first part of the statement, Al Sha'ad oisa, on that which you're going to make. The eini oichel oilam, and maybe what he meant that I'm not going to eat is not that. In other words, he made the following statement: Sha'ad oisa eini oichel Ada Pesach. The chiddush of the Mishnah is, that which you make, I'm not going to eat until Pesach. That which you eat, that which you make, I'm not going to eat until Pesach. So you could think that means, that which you make, until Pesach, I'm not going to eat indefinitely. The chiddush says, no, it means like this. That which you're going to make, I'm not going to eat. And when am I not going to eat it? I'm only not going to eat until Pesach. Says the Ran, because then he should have said, that which you make until Pesach, I'm not going to eat. Kedektani Sefer, like it says in the Sefer. In fact, it didn't say this. Mashma da'ada Pesach, then until Pesach achila kai. It's going on the achila. Okay. Says the Mishnah, She'at nanis li ada Pesach, that that which you're getting hana from me is asur until Pesach. Im hoylechas ala beis avichad chag. If you go to your dad's house before Sukkot, you can't get hana from me until Pesach. So basically, the guy is getting very uptight. He's getting very. He has a very low self-esteem, and he's afraid his wife's running to her parents all the time. So he says to her, "Listen, if you go, I'm answering you in Hana until Pesach. If you go to your father's house until Sukkot, so the halacha is holcha lefnei Pesach. If she goes to her father's house before Pesach, then asur b'hana ad Pesach. She's taka asur until Pesach. But meaning, if you go to your father's house before Pesach, you're going to be asur and hana until Pesach. The truth is she allowed to get hana before Pesach? But what about the fact that she might end up going to her father's house after Pesach? Remember, we had a machloikis about that in the beginning of the Masechta. in other words, one Amoira holds that she could get Hana, let's say before Pesach, and then she'll have to be careful not to go to her father's house before Sukkot. But others say no, she's not allowed to go and get Hana any time before Pesach, because she might go to her father after Sukkot. That's a machlokes. The Mishnah continues. Let's see the bottom line. We explained this earlier, but Rabbi Yehuda says she's allowed to get Hana until Pesach. We're not worried she'll go to her father until Sukkot. Sorry, Rabbi Yehuda holds she's not allowed to get Hana until Pesach, because she might go to her father after Pesach before Sukkot. And Rav Nachman says that she is allowed to. Okay, says the Mishnah further. La'achar Pesach bebal yachel, which means like this: Halcha lefnei Pesach. If she went to her father before Pesach, surah b'hanasa Pesach, she can't get Hana until Pesach. And la'achar Pesach, if she goes to her father after Pesach, B'val Yachel, she could violate the Isser of Bal Yachel. What does it mean? She could violate the Isser Bal Yachel. That if she was nene from the husband before Pesach, if she goes to her father after Pesach, she's over Bal Yachel. The Mishnah ends off, Sha'at nenes li'ad hachag, you can get Hana, whatever you get Hana from me until Sukkot, is asr imhayleches at lebeis avicha Pesach. If you go to your father before Pesach, so halach is hochel lefnei Pesach. If she went before Pesach, asr b'hana ad hachag. She's asr in Hana until Sukkot. However, if umuteres leilech achara Pesach, let's say she went to her father's house before Pesach. Let's say you say like this: whatever Hana you get until Sukkot is asr. If you went to your father's house before Pesach, if she went before Pesach, she's asr and Hana until Sukkot. However, once she went to her father's house before Pesach, she's allowed to go after Pesach. Why? Why should she not be allowed to? Think about what happened. She went to her father's house before Pesach, and the halacha is she's asr and Hana until Sukkot. The halacha is she's allowed to go after Pesach. But you may think that maybe we shouldn't let her go to her father's house until Sukkot, because she might forget that she's asr Hana until Sukkot. We say no, that has nothing to do with it. It's only triggered if she goes to her father before Pesach. So she already triggered it. So what are we afraid? If we allow her to go after Pesach, she's going to forget that she's asr until Sukkot? No, we're not worried about that. We're not choshesh that just because she goes after Pesach, which is permitted, that she's going to forget that she's asr b'hana after Pesach until Sukkot. Okay, so that is Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. And Be'ezus Hashem, next week we'll try to do Nun Zayin Amud Beis. Okay, Hatzlach everyone, have a good night. Kol Tov. Bracha v'Hatzlacha.
Thank you, Rav.
Kol Tov, Kol Tov. Kol Tov. Be well.